You are listening to the Sports CDP Crash Course, your go-to podcast for all things sports related. We talk about how sports clubs and teams can sell more tickets and merchandise than ever before, and how they can negotiate sponsorship agreements of higher value. We also champion women's sport and discuss how data and innovation can help bring equality to the sports industry. We have interviewed industry leaders who have worked with the likes of the NFL, FC Barcelona, Women in Football UK, FIBA, the Davis Cup, just to name a few. So don't miss out. Listen to today's episode. What story are you writing? Together, we can create a more inclusive working life where more people feel seen, heard, and safe. These are the words you see when you land on Anna Blixt's website. Anna Blixt is an expert diversity and inclusion educator and facilitator with a strong passion for improving the work lives of others, because she believes that the workplace is the perfect starting point for societal change. Today, we get to talk to Anna about the importance of diversity and inclusion in sports. Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Before we begin, we like to start off our sessions with an icebreaker. Are you ready for that?
Yes, hit me.
What's your favorite quote, expression, or motto, and why is it your favorite?
I don't know how internationally known the TV show Scum is. It was pretty big, and there's a girl there who had a quote on her bed, and I think about that a lot, which is, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you don't know. So be kind, always.
Absolutely. And it's always such an important conversation, especially online, because it's so easy to just say stuff and just mindlessly scroll and comment, and leave a negative comment, not thinking about how people might be affected. A friend of ours here, Sahaj, who works for Areto Labs, they did a research showing that the kind of abuse that women athletes and women in sports receive. And so whenever you say be kind, it kind of made me think about that and the importance of being extra kind, especially online.
Yeah.
Great quote. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the first thing I think our listeners would love to know is, what is your connection with sports? I know you played college sports in the US and you're really involved in the Swedish sports arena, but please take us back to the start and perhaps end with what you're currently doing in the sports space today.
I was raised in a very sporty family. I started playing soccer when I was 6 or 7, and I kept playing until, I played in the States. When I moved back to Sweden, I got injured, and I met my first boyfriend, so I quit. And but then I started playing again 4 years ago with a bunch of people who, with pretty much the same stories. Everybody quit during their teens or early 20s, and then we all started again, and I've been playing ever since. So I'm still playing football, which is the joy of my life. And I'm on the board of our club, so I'm also at a lot of meetings with district association, which is important as a young woman, or definitely young compared to the other participants on these meetings, and also very much a woman compared to the other participants.
And speaking of quitting, I think that is something that is very an interesting phenomenon, because studies show that girls quit sports at a faster rate than boys, for example, when we're talking about school-going children. And then you kind of mentioning as well that you quit when you were sort of in your early 20s, and now you're kind of coming back. And you kind of jokingly said, "Oh, I met my boyfriend, so I quit." But I think there is something to that, right? So whenever you talk to, say, the people that you're playing with right now, what are some of the reasons that girls or women end up quitting sports at a sort of higher pace than guys or men?
I've done a lot of research in this, actually, because I'm very interested in the reasons. So generally in my team, it's because things got too serious, and it wasn't just for fun anymore, and you had to choose. But that's also like the difference between for like sports for girls and sports for boys is that for boys it's usually there's more teams, more people in most sports, and especially then in soccer. And you can also choose between if you want to go like all in, if you want to, well, not go pro, but aim for it, or if you just want to play for fun. And that doesn't really exist for women. So when you hit a certain age, you have to choose if you want to go all in or if you, well, if you don't want to do it at all, because that's the only alternative. And that's a big problem. So that's what our team is trying to counteract. Like women just playing for fun. So we pride ourselves with being Sweden's best team at losing. And we have a lot of fun. And we actually have like a list of people that want to play. And every week a new person signs up. So it's a long list of people that wants to play in our team, or women that wants to play in our team, because we have so much fun, although we are the worst team.
Wow.
Because we lose all the time. But we have a lot of fun. And we drink a lot of beer.
That's really, really amazing. But tell us a little bit more about your team, because you've said our team a few times, but which team is this? And tell us a bit more about them.
So our team, we have three like senior level teams, but our team is the only one that plays in a league or division. But it's the lowest division, and we're usually in the bottom of that division. Basically, just a lot of people playing for kicks.
I love that. I've never heard someone so optimistic and so happy about losing before. And I think, but there's something to that, isn't there? Just to just have fun, just do it. Who cares if you're losing? What's the worst that could happen? You will lose, and the worst is happening, and it doesn't really affect how you feel.
No,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of teams, when you hear them talking after a game, they're like, do they know they lost? But we're almost always the happiest team after a game. I mean, sometimes perhaps someone got injured and we're sad for that person, but otherwise, yeah.
That's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I love it. Well, Anna, we all have our passions and crosses to bear, so to speak. But I'm really curious, why equality in the workplace? How did you discover that you were passionate about this?
I guess it was actually social media. During my bachelor's, I started reading a lot about feminism on like Facebook and Instagram, and I was like, there's a lot of Facebook groups where these questions were discussed. So I think that's where it started. Like that's what I've always been very interested in injustices, and I've always been very passionate about it. I wanted to become a diplomat, but then I continued after my bachelor's to study gender studies. So in my master's was social studies of gender. I wanted to pursue a career within politics, but then I learned also from like what I gathered during my studies that change doesn't really come from politics, but it rather comes from business. And through my studies, then I learned that, okay, the way to make a change is through work life, because that's where people are, and I want to make a difference in people's everyday life rather than like legislating laws.
One of the things that you said to me when we first met in person is that you're not here to preach to the choir when it comes to equality, diversity, inclusion, but rather that you want to talk to and reach the unbelievers. How did you reach the conclusion that this is what you kind of wanted to focus on, or the approach that you wanted to take in your journey of kind of bringing about change?
I guess I've always discussed a lot of politics and values with people whose values I don't share, because I'm from a small place where people didn't really share my beliefs. So I had to discuss it with them, because I also love discussing. I mean, I wasn't forced to discuss, but you know. And I really like to understand how people think. And I've always been very like inquisitive. So that's where it started, with me always like wanting to understand other people's views and other people's perspectives on things. And I've also realized that other people within my area of expertise, they're really good at preaching to the choir. I don't mean that in a negative way. They're really good at like talking to the choir. Like they're really good at that, explaining to and making them more engaged. And what I like to do is rather engage the people who find feminism to be humbug. So I just really want to, because I can, and I do find it a lot more developing, and it gives me a lot more. It gives me a lot more energy to talk to people and try to understand how they're thinking about something, and also not trying to convince them, but just trying to have them understand me. I want them to understand where I come from, because that's what I think that's what we're missing. They don't understand if they don't understand where I come from, where all this talk about gender equality and inclusion and diversity, if they don't understand where that comes from, they're not going to be able to be a part of the change. So rather than explaining theories, I want to explain, where it comes from, where my beliefs come from.
And I absolutely like your approach, because one of the things that I'm personally passionate about is also bringing everyone in on the conversation, because that's when change happens quicker, right? Because if we are in agreement, then it's kind of like, we are sort of trying to do our part in that sense, because we agree, because we understand. But if a huge chunk of the population doesn't understand something, instead of just leaving them behind, where there's risk of saying, oh, we know what's right and they're not doing what's right, where there's like that division happens, you want to bring in as many people as possible, because at the end of the day, we might not agree on the what and the how and the why, but we are human, and getting to understand each other a bit more, getting to empathize with each other a bit more really helps get over those big issues. Not get over them, but go through the big issues together without alienating anyone.
Exactly. Empathy. That's the key word, I'd say.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the things, apart from playing football and or soccer, as you call it, and apart from sort of doing the diversity, is that you're also actively involved in the supporter culture in Malmö. Can you tell us about what you do when it comes to supporter culture?
Together with a few friends, I started a supporter club for FC Rosengård, which is the best team in Sweden. And they also now played Champions League, although that didn't turn out too well. But they played Barcelona, Bayern Munich, for example. Because it all started like with us just wanting to bring more people to the games. Like, we couldn't understand, like, how aren't there more people looking at this? Like, why aren't people watching these games when this is the best team in Sweden? And whenever Sweden's playing, there's a lot of people. And I mean, they played in Malmö, so many people came to watch them. So we couldn't really understand, like, why aren't people coming? And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to have more people at the games to enjoy what we're loving. I've had meetings with newspapers and other media about the coverage of women's sports, and I've become very engaged in, because I don't understand, like, how is this not a bigger thing? Like, how, because we have a men's team in our city, which is huge. So many people go watch their games, and I don't understand. I can't see, like, because Rosengård's doing a lot better than the other team, so I am the men's team. So I can't see how people don't just like appreciate this and how they're missing out on it. So that's what engages me, I guess.
So you're trying to mobilize as many people to come to the women's games as possible.
What we're doing is also creating an atmosphere that people want to be a part of. So it's not like we're out, knocking on doors, but it's rather that we want to create an atmosphere where people feel like, oh, I really want to be there. And then we also, we invite friends, always like trying to get people to come. We want to make people feel more like they're missing out on something, I guess.
I get you. So instead of rallying the troops, you're trying to make the troops come. Like you're showing them, like, this is what's going on. This is fun.
It's right here.
That's so great. That's such a great approach. Once again, yet another great approach. But what other areas in sports do you think there's plenty of opportunity for reevaluation and improvement when it comes to becoming true champions of diversity and inclusion? Like, what, besides the supporter culture, besides the kind of playing actively and bringing in a crowd that is not necessarily always served, meaning those who just want to play sports for fun and play football for fun. What other areas do you think exist within sports? It could be within the context of Sweden or with the context of football, but what opportunities are there for people to sort of champion diversity in a concrete and real way?
I mean, there's so many things that needs to be done, and we're so far away from being equal. I mean, generally, all like the big sports in Sweden, it's very white. And if we take soccer, for example, you can see that throughout the national team, especially on the men's side or the boys' side, there's a lot of boys with like different ethnicities. And but the older they get, the wider the team gets. And that's because like when it gets serious, you need like that's when like prejudices and unconscious biases, it really affects like the leaders of the teams, because they want people to obey laws or rules, and they want people to, you know, just be one of the team, not be a star or whatever. And that really affects like their views, and their prejudices that they have about certain people affects who gets the chance. And that's also something like, I guess, in all sports and in all and just like different opportunities that people have with like how much different sports cost. And I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I just feel like there's so many things that we need to do in so many areas, that thinking about it, because I read so much about this, I talk so much about this, I'm a part of it in so many ways, I'm having trouble being optimistic when thinking about like what opportunities are there? Well, there's too many, because there's so many things to do.
I feel you. Yeah, I really felt that in like when you said that there's just plenty of opportunity to do so much, that when you're actively involved in it, it can be difficult to be optimistic about the future or the present as well.
I've actively decided to narrow it down. Like as I said, I'm on the board of my club. So I'm talking about like gender equality mainly, but also about like equality for all in these meetings with then different clubs and different associations. So I'm doing that. And I'm also doing, but just by practicing sports, but then also the supporter club. There's so many things I want to do, but I had to decide that this is the only things I'm doing. I can't do more.
Yeah, 100%. I read a book, I think it's called Follow the Joy by Jason Kurtz or something like that. And he just talks about going to India to find himself. And then he talks about, I'm probably going to butcher this, but he talks about Mother Teresa and how people would ask her questions about like, don't you see this problem that's going on? You need to help do this. You need to help do that. You can't just stay in your sort of like hospice or charity and take care of the sick. What about the all the other problems? And then she kind of said, well, if you're passionate about that, then you solve that, because I cannot solve every problem in the world. And it was such a the author Jason was writing about that to say like he finally got to a point where he realized that he cannot possibly try to solve every problem in the world. You can pick your battle, so to speak, and focus on that and make some change in that, and you would have done plenty.
And I mean, that's what Ford did with the automation of do what you do best. I mean, that's what society did. That's why we're here, because everybody started specializing. So yeah, we should do that within our activism as well. Focus on our core values or core fights.
No, I get you. I mean, earlier we spoke a little bit about social media, and one of the things that I've seen, sometimes you go into the comment section and you're like, why did I do that? It's like, I don't learn. Every time I go into the comment section and I see something and I'm upset the whole day. But one of the things that I've seen in different publications and like the comment section is when people talk about the reason they don't watch women's sports or listen to or pay much attention to women's sports is because of the constant complaining about diversity and inclusion, and that they perceive these conversations as too political and therefore not belonging to the sports sphere. What's your opinion on such statements when people say you're making football too political or you're making sports too political? Let's focus on the game and stop talking about politics.
Well, everything's political. Sport is definitely political. So racism stops so many athletes. Sexism stops so many women and girls from practicing their sports, for example. And I mean, just look at the men's World Cup. It's all political. I mean, everything we do is political. It's also different meanings of the word political, because politics is one thing. I mean, politics as in politicians practicing their work, and people talking about values and injustices and discrimination. That's something else. It's still political. To me, it's not politics. It's political. And that's something that we need to talk about all the time in order to, because it's these kind of people that also say it's always been like this and it's been good. Like, we're good with this. But if that would have been an argument, then we would still be running around naked. And we're just trying to improve. We're trying to include more people. We're trying to have less people feel bad about themselves or be upset about not being able to practice their sport, or more people having opportunities. It's just like we're trying to include more people. How is that ever a bad thing? But that's like also what I never like. So I had my first panic attack once when I was scrolling through a comment field. So I don't do that anymore. Yeah, true story. Like, I basically never engaged at all in any comment sections, because, as I said, like, I want to understand people. It's not possible to understand people because they're not gonna, we're too biased when we're commenting online. We don't want to understand the other person. We just want to push our views and our opinions on them. So we don't want to understand people. We just want to, spit it all out there.
But maybe on a more positive note, let's try to find some positives. And because no matter how dire a situation is, there's always something good that's happening, or something that makes you feel optimistic. And in the sports industry, have you seen any changes recently that made you more optimistic about the future of sports when it comes to diversity and inclusion?
Well, this is an easier question than the one with like the opportunities, because for just focusing on the good things, it's yeah, of course, it's the World Cup, for example. No, it wasn't World Cup. It was the European Championships. Sorry, for women. So many people. It was crazy. Like, yeah, it was amazing. If anyone has a chance to go to Australia for this summer's World Cup this summer, please do. It's families, it's kids, it's not drunk, loud people. It's happy, cheering, and friendly people. I've been to a lot of big championships for men. This was the first I was for women. So I grew up traveling, watching different like World Cups and in the Europeans. So I've done both. And this was truly something else. But then, no, I mean, also, like, people are becoming more aware when someone expresses, like, outdated opinions, or, like, sexist, racist, and people call them out. Because it used to be just us. It used to be the social media feminists. And now it's all people calling out these kind of comments. Like, a pretty common example with journalists, being like, oh, so the first person ever to win 10 gold medals is this person, or is this man, when really a woman has already done it. And a lot of people are reacting to those kind of statements, for example. So that's general awareness, which is well, it's not new, but it's really thriving. I'd say it's growing, and that's beautiful to see. But then also, like, parasport is getting a lot more attention, which is so there's like, all these different, like, very different things to be optimistic about.
Have you seen
We're not talking about areas of improvements, but rather talking about the small improved areas. It's
much easier.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Let's Correct the Internet movement?
Oh yeah, I have.
Yes.
Oh my God. Wow.
How brilliant.
I love that. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's quite, yeah. For anyone who doesn't know what Let's Correct the Internet is, I will put a link in the description box here below, and you can just follow that and see. It's so cool. I watched their ad, and it was chills. And it took me back to drama school days where, like, we would talk about evocation, like you do something and then it just, your whole being is like comes alive and you're really questioning like what's actually going on. And the ad had that same effect where like you really just stop and go, oh, is this happening? And I think that we need those moments of just like wake up and smell the coffee. And I think that they do that so well.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's really like, that's my cup of tea.
But if there's someone listening today who wants to do their part in being a diversity and inclusion champion, what advice would you give them? How can they get started? Or maybe how can they support those who are already actively working towards this?
Supporting those who are already active, I'd say listen and then like give your time, give your engagement, show them that like whatever you need me to do, I'll help out. Generally, I'd also say like try to question the status quo. Who are the people in your team or club? Who does your sport attract? What kind of people? Where do they come from? How can you reach further? Like, how can you reach other types of people? What priorities are made within your club or sport or team? Who is prioritized? Where does the money go? So just like question status quo, question and like why are things done in this certain way? It's not because it's the best way, it's because that's how it's always been done. So we have to question it and we have to say, like, why are these things being done in certain ways, and what can we change, and who is affected by the ways it's done today? How can we reach more people, make our association more inclusive? If you're working with kids, for example, have a survey, just like Google Forms, and ask them, what do you need to feel comfortable or safe? What makes you happy playing your sport? What is missing? Ask them, what do you want? And perhaps I want, so I asked a few kids the other day, like, what do you want in a coach? And they said, someone who's friendly and not saying that you're a bad player. Okay, so is that something that you have experienced? So we have to talk with kids, because kids are the future. We have to make them feel safe and happy about what they're doing.
Fantastic. Those are very practical steps that people can take. And so I hope that I know that this will be very valuable. So thank you so much for sharing that. And finally, what exciting things are you currently working on or doing, and where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Well, I'm releasing the 3rd season of my podcast, which is called Jämställt arbetsliv, or Gender Equal Work Life. It's about inclusion in general. There's only one episode in English though, but it's about master suppression techniques. So that might be interesting. And football season is coming up. So our team is playing, but more importantly, Rosengård is playing. Love that. And if someone's in Malmö, please join us. And if you want to reach out, I am pretty active on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, which is annablixt.com. So my name.com, where you can find me and read more about me and what I'm doing.
Yes, and we will be sure to link everything in the show notes, the description. So please feel free to get in contact with Anna and just get the conversation going, and you will get some pretty practical tips from Anna on what you can do as an individual, as a company, as an organization, whatever capacity you are inquiring in, you will be able to get some pretty good practical steps. Anna, it has been such a pleasure having a conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If your goal is to get more supporters, superior sales, and real revenue, then visit our website at datatalks.sc and fill out our demo form to experience firsthand how we can help you. Data Talks, more supporters, superior sales, real revenue.